You guys know you're glad I didn't start talking till that song ended. Dirty Work, the 13th episode of the second series, is based on the story of the same name from the Railway series book, Duck and the Diesel. This is the second part of the Duck and the Diesel saga, as it takes place directly after the events of Pop Goes the Diesel. Diesel is still having a hard time having been made to look silly in front of the trucks as they continue to laugh and sing rude songs. Duck soon overhears the sinning and firmly bumps the trucks to stop them. Duck apologises for the truck's behaviour, but Diesel, still furious, blames Duck for making them laugh at him. Henry, watching nearby with James and Gordon, objects, saying that Duck would never do such a thing, and adds that while he, James and Gordon have their differences with Duck, they would never tell the trucks about them, since it would be, well...
"Disgraceful," said Gordon. "Disgusting," put in James. "Despicable," finished Henry.
That's the phrase. By now, Diesel's anger towards Duck has grown to such a point where he wants to find a way to get rid of him. Inspired by the engine's words about the trucks, he makes a plan to spread lies. Going into the yard the next day, Diesel tells the trucks that he laughed at their joke about him and tells them some about the bigger engines and claims that he heard them from Duck. Before leaving, he warns them not to say that he told them. The trucks of course find these jokes hilarious and laugh at the bigger engines and tell them that they came from Duck to get even with him for forcing them to behave. But even Duck is responsible for the trucks' ridicule. The engines hold a meeting and agree that Duck needs to be taught a lesson. They decide that since he once prevented them from entering the sheds, they will do the same to him. Later, Duck returns to the sheds exhausted after a long, hard day's work. However, when he tries to get back inside for a rest, the bigger engines stand close together and hiss steam at him. They tell him that because he tells tales about them to the trucks, they hate him and want Diesel to replace him. Duck starts to argue with them, but before long the Fat Controller arrives to break them up and see what the commotion is. He hears the bigger engines' accusations against Duck, and while trying not to laugh himself, gives Duck a chance to explain himself. Duck swears that he did not make these jokes and that no steam engine would be that mean. Diesel then comes forward and the Fat Controller asks him what he knows. Diesel fakes being shocked at Duck's actions, but claims ignorance otherwise. The Fat Controller apologises to Duck, saying that until he gets to the bottom of the incident that he must go to Edward's station at Wellsworth for a while, and reassures him that Edward will be happy to see him. Believing that the Fat Controller has turned against him too, Duck sadly obliges, and as Diesel watches him puff away, he gives a satisfied smirk. As I mentioned, this episode takes place not long after the events of Pop Goes the Diesel, and it's a really enjoyable continuation of the story, seeing how far the joke had gotten with Diesel and what pushed him over the edge. Because in the previous episode he started off as seemingly nice and polite, but a bit of a show-off as well. And in Dirty Work we get to see his devious side, which he became famous for, hence the nickname. The episode also brought on one of the many popular quotes that turned into a meme for the TV series. That being said by James, Gordon and Henry.
"We engines have our differences, but we never talk about them to the trucks. That would be disgraceful," said Gordon. "Disgusting," put in James. "Despicable," finished Henry.
Classic. The episode also has two valuable lessons within it. The first one being about how bad it is to lie. Whether you're trying to hurt someone or get out of trouble, a lie is a lie, and the more you do it, the more it becomes a habit. And the other lesson is about jumping to conclusions before knowing the truth, which was exactly what Gordon, James and Henry did. They just went by these rumours that were spread about by the troublesome trucks that was originally spread by Diesel, and just automatically jumped to conclusions before they found out what the truth was. Those are two things that you should never do. And that's really great lessons to teach kids. Take lessons from that, most current children's shows of today. The episode also has a change that's very similar to the change they did in Tenders and Turntables, where they add in an explanation as to what Diesel's plan is for Duck.
Diesel hated Duck. He wanted him to be sent away, so he made a plan. He was going to tell lies about Duck.
They did the same thing in Tenders and Turntables, where Sir Ringo Starr announced at the end that the engines were going to go on strike. The episode also led to Christopher Awdry writing 3 annual stories based on this episode, giving us some full details about how Diesel came up with those insulting nicknames for Gordon, James and Henry. The stories being Galloping Sausage, Rusty Red Scrap Iron, and Old Square Wheels. I like how Wilbert Awdry's son did a sort of prequel to the insults of this story for an annual. And like all episodes I've covered for Series 2 so far, you have to admire Sir Ringo Starr's performance in this one.
Duck called me a galloping sausage, spluttered Gordon. Rusty red scrap iron, hissed James. I'm old square wheels, fumed Henry. Well, Duck considered. I only wish, sir, he said gravely, that I'd thought of those names myself, if the dome fits. He made trucks laugh at us, accused the engines. The Fat Controller recovered. He'd been trying not to laugh himself.
Oscar-worthy. I especially love his delivery when Diesel tells a lie that he knows nothing of what's been going on in the yard.
I can't understand it, sir. To think that Duck of all engines. I am dreadfully grieved, sir, but know nothing. I see, said the Fat Controller. Diesel squirmed and hoped he didn't.
And when you watch the episode years later, you can sort of tell that the Fat Controller's response to Diesel's lies and sort of hints to the fact that he knows that Diesel's probably bullshitting him and that he knows more than what he's letting on. And it's also the first sad ending we get for the second series. I think this has to be one of the saddest endings we've gotten for the TV series since the sad story of Henry's ending. Just seeing Duck run off sadly to Edward's station while the other engines think he's horrid, making it seem like Diesel has won the day. But whether or not he has won the day, you'll have to find out tomorrow. But if you've watched the TV series throughout your whole life, I'm sure you'll know the answer. But if you want to see the answers anyway, stick around for tomorrow. Dirty Work is another great episode for the TV series in my opinion. It shows off Diesel's devious side, it has a sad ending which makes you really want to know what's going to happen next, and it's just an all-around fun episode where you get to see the troublesome trucks in full force again. And it has a great callback to Duck Takes Charge as well. Rewatch this if you haven't seen it for a while. It's definitely worth your time.
Duck trundled sadly away while Diesel smirked with triumph.